Okay, so you pay $19.99 a month for Netflix. That's less than a single trip to Starbucks for two people. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you think, this has to be one of the highest margin businesses on earth. It's just video files sitting on a server. Bandwidth is basically free. Whatever they paid to make Stranger Things, they've already made that money back 100 times over from all the people streaming it. You do that math quickly enough, and streaming starts to look like the easiest business in the world to be in. Just point a camera, upload the file, and collect subscription fees forever. But here's the thing, nobody tells you the actual math. Netflix is not a cheap business to run. It is one of the most capital-intensive media operations ever built. In 2025, the company generated $45.18 billion in revenue and kept roughly 29.5% of it as operating profit. Genuinely excellent numbers. But getting there required spending more than $20 billion a year on content alone, running data infrastructure at a scale most governments don't operate, and surviving multiple moments where the entire business model looked like it might collapse. Streaming was supposed to become a brutal, low-margin commodity business because anyone with a server and a licensing deal could theoretically do it. Somehow, one company ended up capturing almost a third of every dollar as pure profit, while dozens of competitors bled cash trying to catch up. To understand how, we need to follow the money, starting with a single subscription. When Netflix reports its numbers to investors, almost all of the revenue comes from one place: people paying a monthly fee to watch things. In 2025, subscription revenue made up the overwhelming majority of that $45.18 billion. But a second, much newer revenue stream is growing fast underneath it: advertising. Netflix's ad-supported tier, which didn't exist before November 2022, generated more than $1.5 billion in 2025, more than double what it made the year before. And the company is targeting roughly $3 billion in ad revenue for 2026. That's still a small slice of the pie today, but it's the fastest growing slice. And it's reshaping who Netflix actually considers its most valuable customer. More on that later. The critical thing to understand right now is this: the show is not the product, the habit is. And that habit is extraordinarily expensive to manufacture and defend. Take one subscription. A standard plan in the United States retails for $19.99 a month. When you hand over that money, most people assume it's basically covering server costs and a slice of whatever new show you happen to be watching that week. That is not what's happening. Netflix's total cost of revenue, the combined cost of content, streaming delivery, and customer service, ran at roughly 51% of total revenue in 2025. That means for every dollar Netflix collects, about 51 cents goes toward content amortization, the cloud infrastructure that streams video to your TV, and the people who answer support tickets. Marketing, technology and development, and general administrative costs eat up another chunk on top of that. Historically, around 19% of revenue combined. What's left, the operating profit, comes out to that 29.5% margin. So the raw physical cost of getting a show onto your screen is real money, but it's not the majority of what you're paying for. The other roughly 70 cents on the dollar is not simple overhead. It is a machine built to make sure you never have a reason to cancel. Here is how that machine actually works, starting with content. Because content is not expensed the way you'd think. When Netflix greenlights a show, it doesn't book the entire production budget as an expense the moment the show airs. It capitalizes the cost, meaning the money spent on a series or film gets recorded as an asset on the balance sheet, then gradually written off or amortized over the shorter of the title's contractual window, or up to 10 years. Critically, that amortization is accelerated, not spread evenly. On average, more than 90% of a title's cost gets written off within the first 4 years of its release, because that's when the overwhelming majority of viewing happens. A hit like Stranger Things earns back its cost almost immediately in accounting terms, because the amortization schedule assumes exactly that kind of front-loaded viewing. A flop, on the other hand, still has to be written off on roughly the same schedule, whether anyone watches it or not. This is why Netflix's content budget behaves less like a grocery bill and more like a venture capital portfolio. A relatively small number of massive hits are expected to carry the cost of a much larger number of shows that barely move the needle. Now, let's talk about why customers keep paying, because that's the part that actually took Netflix 2 decades to engineer. First, there's the sheer size of the catalog and the recommendation engine that makes it navigable. Netflix's personalization system is estimated to drive somewhere between 75% and 80% of everything people watch on the platform. And Netflix itself has previously estimated the recommendation engine alone saves the company more than $1 billion a year, mostly by reducing the number of subscribers who cancel out of frustration or boredom. Behavioral researchers who've studied the platform note that a subscriber typically browses for well under 2 minutes before losing interest and either picking something or closing the app. The algorithm's entire job is to win that short window every single time for over 325 million paid households. Then there's the pricing structure itself. As of March 2026, Netflix offers 3 tiers in the US. An ad-supported plan at $8.99 a month, a standard ad-free plan at $19.99, and a premium 4K plan at $26.99. Notice the gap. The jump from standard to premium is only $7, and premium unlocks 4K resolution and more simultaneous streams, which matters enormously to households with more than one person watching. Once you're already paying nearly $20 a month, the extra $7 for the top tier feels small by comparison. It's the same psychological mechanism that turns a mid-sized Starbucks cup into the obvious choice. Pricing tiers built so the upgrade feels like the bargain, not the splurge. And critically, the ad-supported tier isn't just there to capture price-sensitive customers anymore. Streaming executives now believe a highly engaged ad tier subscriber, someone who watches around 40 hours a month, can generate revenue on par with or exceeding a full-price premium subscriber once ad dollars are factored in. Nearly 71% of Netflix's new subscriber growth over the past 2 years has come from that ad-supported tier. The cheapest plan on the menu quietly became one of the most valuable. Now let's talk about the moment Netflix decided to stop being polite about who actually pays. For years, sharing a Netflix password with friends, exes, and extended family was practically a cultural institution. The company's own marketing once tweeted, "Love is sharing a password." Then, starting in the US in May 2023, Netflix reversed course entirely and began charging non-household members an extra fee to keep using an account, an extra member charge that today runs $6.99 a month on the ad-supported plan and $9.99 on ad-free plans. The backlash was loud. The financial result was not. Netflix added nearly 6 million paid subscribers in the very next quarter, then more than 9 million the quarter after that, with the company reporting that in every market where the crackdown rolled out, sign-ups were exceeding cancellations. What looked like a customer-hostile cash grab turned into one of the single biggest revenue accelerants in company history, converting millions of free riders into paying accounts almost overnight. Here's something that seems counterintuitive. The same way Starbucks opening 2 stores a few hundred feet apart seems counterintuitive. Netflix deliberately runs 3 pricing tiers: an ad business, a password sharing fee, and now increasingly live sports and events, rather than picking one clean business model and sticking with it. Each format captures a different type of viewer: the price-sensitive subscriber who tolerates ads, the household that wants 0 interruptions, the family that shares one account across 4 screens, the sports fan who wants a live event and nothing else. The goal is to make it structurally difficult for a competitor to find an underserved gap, because Netflix has already built a door for almost every kind of customer to walk through. Netflix made a deliberate strategic decision a long time ago that mirrors almost exactly the logic Starbucks used when it refused to franchise. In its early years, Netflix was primarily a licensor, paying other studios for the rights to stream their shows. The problem with that model is control. When most of your catalog belongs to someone else, that someone else can pull it whenever they want, raise the price whenever they want, or launch a competing service and take the content with them, which is precisely what happened when Disney, NBC Universal, and eventually Warner Bros. Discovery all launched their own streaming platforms and yanked their libraries back. So, Netflix pivoted hard toward owning its own content outright. Original productions the company fully controls forever on its own platform. That single strategic shift is the entire reason the company could survive losing The Office and Friends to competitors without the business collapsing. By fiscal year 2025, the strategy had gone even further. In December 2025, Netflix agreed to acquire Warner Bros., including its film and television studios, HBO and HBO Max, in a deal with a total enterprise value of approximately $82.7 billion, later amended to an all-cash offer of $27.75 per Warner Bros. Discovery share. Netflix said it expects the deal to generate $2 billion to $3 billion in annual cost savings by the third year after closing, and to be accretive to earnings per share within 2 years. The company that once rented other people's shows is now buying one of the oldest studios in Hollywood outright, along with Game of Thrones, the DC Universe, and HBO's entire prestige library, specifically so that it never has to negotiate for that content again. This is also why the company's spending on original productions keeps climbing rather than plateauing. Netflix says it will spend more than $20 billion on content in 2026, up from $18 billion in 2025, covering scripted series, films, live sporting events, video podcasts, and games. Compare that to the size of the workforce actually running the company. As of the end of 2025, Netflix employed approximately 16,000 full-time people worldwide, which works out to roughly $2.8 million in revenue generated per employee, an extraordinary figure for a company of its size, and one that's only possible because so much of the actual production work is outsourced to independent studios, directors, and crews on a project-by-project basis, rather than kept in-house as permanent staff. Now, for the most brilliant thing Netflix built that has nothing to do with the shows themselves. The recommendation and retention engine as a financial instrument, not a convenience feature. When Netflix talks internally about churn, the monthly rate at which subscribers cancel, it treats a single percentage point of improvement as worth hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Because every subscriber retained is one Netflix doesn't have to spend marketing dollars replacing. Industry estimates put Netflix's monthly churn somewhere around 2% to 2.5%, meaningfully lower than the 3% to 5% range typical of competing streamers. That gap compounds ferociously over time. A subscriber base with even slightly lower churn needs far fewer new signups each year just to stand still, which means more of the marketing budget and content budget can go toward growth instead of replacement. Now let's talk about what happens when things go wrong, because this business is nowhere near as stable as 325 million subscribers makes it look. Start with the raw material Netflix depends on: hit content. Unlike Starbucks, which can hedge against a bad coffee harvest with futures contracts, there is no futures market for whether a $250 million series becomes a cultural phenomenon or a forgotten footnote. The 2023 Hollywood writers and actors strikes functioned almost exactly like a coffee crop frost, an external shock to the supply chain that Netflix had no ability to control, delaying productions across the industry for months and forcing the company to lean harder on international content and its existing library while the pipeline refilled. Content risk is structural, not occasional. It's the reason Netflix greenlights far more shows than it ever expects to become hits, spreading the bet across genres, countries, and formats rather than concentrating it in a handful of expensive originals. Then there's competitive risk, which has only intensified. Amazon Prime Video is Netflix's closest rival by subscriber count, though still more than 100 million subscribers behind. Disney Plus and Hulu remain aggressive on price and franchise content. And in December 2025, Netflix beat out Paramount, Skydance, and Comcast in a bidding war for Warner Bros. A deal that, had it gone the other way, would have combined HBO Max, Paramount Plus, and Pluto TV into a single competitor with a US streaming market share on par with or ahead of Netflix's own. Netflix won that fight, but winning it required committing to one of the largest acquisitions in media history, funded partly through a $42.2 billion bridge financing facility, and the company paused its share buyback program entirely to preserve cash for the deal. Wall Street's reaction was not universally warm. Even after strong quarterly results, Netflix shares fell on the news as investors weighed the strategic upside against the sheer size of the financial commitment and integration risk involved in absorbing an entire century-old studio. Labor and cost inflation compound the content risk. As Netflix's live sports ambitions expand, covering events like WWE programming, MLB's Home Run Derby, and boxing, production costs for live, unscripted one-take television are far less forgiving than scripted content that can be reshot and re-edited. And every price increase carries reputational risk. Netflix has now raised US prices twice in just over a year, with the March 2026 hike pushing the ad-supported tier to $8.99, standard to $19.99, and premium to $26.99. Historically, Netflix lost subscribers after a major 2022 price push. This time the company is betting that more than 100 million net new subscribers added since then, combined with the lowest churn in the streaming industry, gives it enough goodwill to keep raising prices without triggering a mass exodus. So far, subscriber growth has held up, but every hike narrows the margin for error. So what does one subscriber actually generate? Let's do the math. Netflix's blended global average revenue per membership works out to somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 to $14 a month, once you average across the roughly 20 US standard plan and much cheaper pricing in markets like India, Brazil, and Southeast Asia. Against that revenue, cost of revenue eats up roughly half, largely content amortization and streaming delivery costs. Before you even get to marketing, spend aimed at keeping that specific subscriber from churning. Multiply the difference between a subscriber who stays 5 years and one who cancels after 5 months across a base of 325 million people, and you understand why a single percentage point of churn moves Netflix's earnings statement by hundreds of millions of dollars, and why the company is willing to spend $20 billion a year on content and pause its own stock buybacks to protect that number. Here's the optimistic scenario and the realistic one, because the difference matters. Optimistic. Subscriber growth continues at a healthy clip. The ad tier keeps roughly doubling as promised. Churn holds near its industry-low 2% range, and the Warner Brothers integration delivers the projected $2 billion to $3 billion in annual synergies on schedule. Under that path, Netflix's own 2026 guidance calls for revenue of $50.7 billion to $51.7 billion and an operating margin around 31.5%, with free cash flow guidance raised to roughly $12.5 billion. Realistic. Content costs keep climbing as the industry competes for the same limited pool of A-list talent and IP. The ad market softens during a broader economic slowdown. Integrating a company the size of Warner Brothers proves messier and slower than projected. And price hikes finally start pushing meaningful numbers of price-sensitive subscribers toward the ad tier or out the door entirely. Under those conditions, margin expansion stalls, and a business that traded as high as roughly $310 billion in market capitalization in mid-2026 has to prove, quarter after quarter, that its profitability trajectory hasn't just been a temporary function of pausing dividends and buybacks to hoard cash for one enormous deal. If you want to weigh into this business yourself, the options look different from Starbucks, because there's no equivalent to a coffee shop franchise here. There's no local Netflix outlet you can open. The most direct path, if you're a studio, an independent production company, or a filmmaker, is to become a content supplier, pitching, licensing, or co-producing a show that Netflix then owns and amortizes on its own books, similar in spirit to how a licensed partner supplies goods under someone else's brand. It's a route available to production companies and creators, not individuals looking for a side income. For everyone else, the most accessible form of ownership is buying shares of Netflix on NASDAQ under the ticker NFLX. As of July 2026, the company carried a market capitalization in the range of $290 billion to $310 billion, making it one of the most valuable media companies in the world, despite running with a headcount smaller than a single large hospital system. Owning shares gives you a claim on that operating margin and on however the Warner Brothers integration plays out, without needing to greenlight a single show yourself. There's also the advertising route. As Netflix's ad business scales toward $3 billion and beyond in 2026, any company willing to buy inventory on the platform effectively gets to rent access to an audience approaching 1 billion people globally, the same logic that makes a Starbucks storefront valuable real estate, just applied to attention instead of square footage. The biggest lesson from Netflix isn't what it charges for a subscription. It's why more than 325 million households keep paying it, quarter after quarter, even as the price climbs, and cheaper alternatives sit one tap away on the same smart TV. The show is the trigger. It's what gets you to open the app after dinner instead of scrolling somewhere else. But what Netflix actually sells is the felt sense that there is always something worth watching, curated specifically for you, available in under 2 minutes of browsing. The recommendation engine converts that feeling into a genuine financial asset, worth an estimated $1 billion a year in retained subscribers who never had a reason to leave. The content ownership strategy, culminating in an $82.7 billion bet on Warner Bros., converts creative control into negotiating leverage that no licensing deal could ever provide. And the tiered pricing structure, from a $9 ad-supported plan to a $27 premium tier, converts a single audience into 3 or 4 distinct revenue streams from the exact same catalog. Netflix is not in the streaming business. It never really was. It is in the attention business. And the biggest lesson it teaches is this: build the thing people reach for without thinking. Keep making it slightly harder to leave than to stay. And you haven't just built a platform. You've built a business that compounds on itself. One subscription, one algorithm, one acquisition at a time.